And that changed with one man. We've been talking about him recently. That changed in the 1600s with the coming along of one Isaac Newton. Let me tell you about Isaac Newton. I'd love to tell you that he was the most friendly guy ever, that he was so personable, that he was just this charming lad that really advanced our understanding of the universe. But that was not true at all. Isaac Newton was a pill. By all accounts, he was a fairly foul human being. And that was caused when he was in his mother's womb. His father died before he even got a chance to meet his father. And when he was very young, when he was 3 years old, his mom left and started another family with some other guy and came home when he was a teenager. How do you think how do you think Newton took that?
How did he live?
He lived under foster care, whatever the case was. But he was so angry, reclusive of a person, a curmudgeon-y guy, that he retreated into the natural laws. What are the laws that govern everything that we see and observe? Now, the famous story goes, that's probably almost certainly hyperbole, not true, is that an apple fell on Isaac Newton's head and he discovered gravity. That's the legend of Isaac Newton. This almost certainly never happened. But Isaac Newton's contributions to our society could not be understated. Because what Isaac Newton did that was not the same as everybody else. Everybody else was trying to figure out, what are these phenomena? What are the laws that govern the heavens? People would figure out, what are the laws that govern the earth? Isaac Newton was the first one that asked this very important question. And this is what it has to do with the apple. If the apple falls from the tree, does the moon fall too? Think about that. If the apple falls from the tree, does the moon fall too? And it turns out he was right. The same force, a force that he determined, he didn't know what it was, but he called this force gravity, was the same effect, the same thing that was happening here on earth governed the stars. And that was the first time in our existence which this was thought of. The heavens aren't something different, inspired by whoever, perfect in their appearance. It's the same laws that tell us that the apple is falling from the tree. Now, when he was just in his early 20s, he became obsessed with this concept. And, he wrote that he sat in a reflecting gaze under an apple tree. And he wrote out the mathematical laws of motion. He invented, in just a short amount of time, what you guys will learn in your school. He invented calculus. Isn't that crazy? He invented calculus. He thought it out of thin air. And it was to describe the motions of the planet going around, or all the planets going around the sun. And he hypothesized, he engaged in a thought experiment, an experiment of the mind where you're not confined to the laws of physics as we know them. He said, what would happen if we had a mountain hugely tall, taller than any mountain that we know of, and we put a cannonball, a cannon on top of this mountain? If we were to shoot this cannon, it would fall and hit the earth. The earth is curved. They knew this in Newton's time, that it would fall. What if you shot it a little faster from this tall hill? It would fall a little further. But what if this? Isaac Newton asked the question, what if it was so fast, this cannonball, that the gravity of the earth could not pull this cannonball back to the earth before it started traveling around the earth? Pretty crazy. He called this orbit. If something is free falling fast enough, it would go around, just like the cartoons of old, when you'd have the roadrunner run around the whole earth and come around on the other side. This is what would happen to an object in free fall that had sufficient speed. This was crazy because these were the phenomena that described the planet's motion. And Isaac Newton had a problem. People before him already discovered that the planets revolve around the sun. There was still some minor doubt among a minority of people, but they had already discovered this. But what Kepler, another brilliant man, had shown is that the motions of planets were not circles, at all, but they were ellipses like the shape of an egg. And Isaac Newton's laws described these motions in great detail. In fact, from what we could observe at the time, it seemed to be perfect. Interestingly enough, you know what Newton did with these discoveries? He wrote them down on a piece of paper, moved on to the next thing. I talked a little bit, he has this great understanding of the whole cosmos, and you think he would share it with everybody. No, he was a recluse. He didn't want to share his ideas. And he didn't want to share his ideas because some guy, his name was Hooke, not such a pleasant name. Some guy, Hooke, had stolen his ideas that he discovered previously about light. And he was just a recluse professor, kind of shut himself in, content in his own room. Well, one person was having an argument with Hooke about trying to come up with the math to describe the motions of the planets. They were trying to figure it out. A lot of people were trying to figure it out. But you know what? They couldn't do the math. They could not do the math to describe the motions of the planets around the sun. So what this guy did, his name was Halley. His last name was Halley. He went to Isaac Newton and he said, we're having trouble. Isaac Newton was known as a very brilliant mathematician. He said, we can't do this math. Can you do this math? And he goes, I've already done this years ago. Yeah, my papers are around here somewhere. I'll find them. And he went back and refound his work and rediscovered his own work. And he gave probably one of the most influential books in human history to Halley. Principia Mathematica. Those were the laws in mathematical form that described the motion of planets.